Okay, so for example, the state introduced this for the purpose of saying, you see, these order sets are good enough. So what he did was murder. And he should have followed the order sets like other doctors who follow the order sets. Well, we know they're not mandatory order sets. We know there are guidelines. And we know that discretion is given to the doctor at bedside. So for that reason, this shouldn't have been introduced to begin with. But they chose to. They made that affirmative decision to do that, and as a response, we should be able to say, well, okay, yeah, that's the new policy, but look, there are some consequences to that policy, and this is one of them. And that's it. We're not making this a mini trial as to the the remedies that they've utilized. But these 2 or 3 questions, and that's it. Then I'm getting back to what should be introduced into this case. I didn't bring that evidence in, they did. And I just simply feel that we have to respond. I can't leave that alone and in hopes that there's not a juror here thinking in the back of their mind, oh man, these new order sets must be the way it's supposed to be done, so therefore he's a killer. I can't allow that to stand or without addressing it.
Anything else?
One moment, Your Honors. We're just hopeful the witness has amazing ear-blocking capabilities.
May I just clarify that the issues I brought up in here have been remedied in the current order set we have? Okay.
And Your Honor, I believe that we hadn't yet introduced the new order set. I believe that defense introduced the newer order set and their cross earlier.
No, I've never introduced the order set.
Okay.
We did
Yeah.
A and B. We didn't C.
No, I didn't. No, C.
C was shown as well.
No, C was shown. It's marked as State's Exhibit. I actually had never seen the order sets, to be honest.
The new order set's remedial in nature. She's trying to change a remedial moment. No.
I'm saying, who did we show it to?
You've made your record.
16 Janet Sherrill.
I'm sorry.
Okay, you've made your record. I'll step off. You can proffer away.
Are you saying that I can't ask her about this?
No, you cannot.
That doesn't mean I used it.
We're compounding something that's already by rule, 407, it's not admissible. We're compounding it even more.
Then what we would like is to strike this order set from being entered into evidence and
The new order's the remedial one.
Yes, the remedial one, and with an instruction to this jury that they are to disregard this new order set or any mentions that have been made in this trial about that. I think that's the only way you can cure this issue without prejudicing Dr. Husel.
I have it right here.
Help me understand that argument. What's the prejudice to Husel if it's a remedial action after the fact?
Because it's evidence that's being considered in the guilt phase of his murder trial, Judge. I mean, the state brought it in for a reason because they believe...
See, I don't think the state did, but that's for the transcript.
It's marked State's Exhibit. We didn't mark it.
It was marked.
And I can recall them bringing it up. Ms. Menashe recalls it. I would not be addressing this issue if I didn't think it came up in the trial. Wouldn't care.
Anything else? I'll step off, proffer your record.
Okay. Judge, I think I've proffered our reasoning behind it already.
Well, proffer, I'm not supposed to be there. If you have, there's nothing else you wish to add to what's already been said on the record?
Do you have anything to add? I think I've laid it out for the record. We would be requesting that.
A proffer is never done with the judge present. I know there's judges in this court that think they need to be present. You shouldn't be. That's bad form. This is your chance to open up the record for anything you think I've done so you don't think I'm being influenced in any way.
No, Judge, I think I've laid out our rationale and our reasoning. I don't think it's necessary for you to step down. I will ask at this time, though, that an instruction be made to the jury. I think the jury is aware of what's transpired here. If for some reason I'm not allowed to go into this, I think that has a negative effect on the defense.
Any objection to a curative instruction?
I've been on before. I'm not allowed to say anything. right? Is that the
Correct.
word? Okay. But you can consult. Oh, I'm sorry.
Your Honor, what would you be suggesting as a curative measure?
I might discuss with them that there's a concept under the law called a subsequent remedial measure. It's not to be considered by them for any reason, okay? By law, it's not relevant, and that'll be it.
Could we ask that Your Honor instruct them that they are to disregard the subsequent order set and not consider it in any way? That's all.
Am I accenting it?
Yes, because it's already accented during the questioning, Judge. We took a break during an objection. This is the issue. And if that's the case, then let's get rid of all of it. We pointed it out. Obviously, there are a curative instruction on many occasions sometimes has to direct attention to the matter. I think that
Any objection then?
Yes, I think like the court said, it's going to draw extra attention to the order set, and then they're going to infer that there's something else. I think it's perfectly sufficient to explain to them it shouldn't be used for the purposes of anything other than to compare it. It's
Okay.
we are the prejudiced party, and that's why we would specifically like it to address.
Well, that's an issue for the Court of Appeals here, okay?
I certainly don't hope so.
Okay. I'll add it in, and we'll just get this matter once and done. Is that the last of the question you have for the doctor?
For that, on that topic.
So you have other cross?
Yes, just
Okay.
2 or 3 questions.
Well, I know a judge, if you'd have said that, you'd have locked yourself in.
No, just a couple questions.
That's better. Attorney Huber, you have to excuse us.
That's all good.
You're to disregard that whole entire conversation. We just need you there for it.
It's true.
You okay, Sam?
Just stretching.
We're going to have to all join yoga here, since it was recommended.
I'm sitting on that rock.
It just seems to penalize large dudes. Stretch like that. If I could stretch like that, I wouldn't be here. Okay.
All rise.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for your patience today. I need to explain something to you. I usually try to do this as we go through the trial, but this one's kind of come to the forehead. There's a concept in the law called subsequent remedial measures. And what that is you can't hear me? Wow.
Subsequent son.
Here, let me sit down. A little disrespectful, but I'll sit down. It's the plexiglass's fault. There's a concept in the law called subsequent remedial measures. Now, what that is, something's changed because of an event. Policy, format, something along the lines, okay? Under the law, you can't consider that, okay? Now, in particular, we've been talking about the new orders. You can't consider it. You're to disregard that, okay? Anything for the record?
That's all we need, Judge.
Anything?
No, Your Honor.
So it's as if you never heard anything about the change in orders. Okay, it's not for your consideration. Mr. Baez, continue on.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I just one moment.
Okay. Tech people. Her fingers were flying while you guys were gone, so.
It started blinking right as
Right as I started talking, huh? Is that a sign?
might be.
Might be.
May I please the court?
Man.
Dr. Moody, I want to conclude by asking you about something the prosecutor asked you earlier. You testified on that about receiving a phone call where you were notified that Dr. Husel had given 1,000 mics of fentanyl to a patient?
Yes.
Okay. And then subsequent to that, you were asked about reaching out to Dr. Husel. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, what you had done was you had texted Dr. Husel and let him know that you were thinking of him and his family.
That's right.
Okay. And you advised him that this is crazy and you couldn't believe how it had spun out of control and you were so sorry for him and his family.
That's right.
And you also said that you were truly sick of what he was going through and that to please let you know if there's anything you could do. Is that correct?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Moody, I'd like to direct your attention to the discussions that were had about the death rattle, as defense counsel called it. You said these are a symptom of the secretions. Is that what it was that you said?
That's right.
Are there medications that you give to treat that?
Yes, we can use atropine or some other medications that help to minimize those secretions, but they may not entirely resolve.
And forgive me if I mispronounce this, but what is a nasal cannula?
It's oxygen that goes under the nose.
Do you ever use this for your palliative extubations?
I do, in most cases.
And what's the purpose of that?
Just to help with that transition that I think we talked about when you're going from quite a lot of oxygen to room air. Instead of just room air, that would at least help supplement the oxygen and perhaps alleviate the work of breathing a little bit. There's still a big change in terms of that oxygenation, but it's meant for comfort in those cases.
Okay. Can you tell me the difference between the DNR-CC and the DNR-CCA?
Sure.
Objection beyond scope, cross.
I'm using it as a transition. I believe we were
Okay, I'll
talking.
let you have it.
Thank you.
So a DNR-CCA, and it stands for Do Not Resuscitate Critical Care Arrest, and that arrest is the important word there. We will continue to do everything for that patient, meaning mechanical ventilation, vasopressors, dialysis, other medications to help their heart, et cetera, short of them suffering a cardiac arrest. So if their heart were to stop, in that case, we would not perform CPR, we would not shock their heart, or give them any medications to restart their heart. We would instead let them pass away naturally. DNRCC is Do Not Resuscitate Comfort Care, which is kind of like it sounds. It means that we are strictly focusing on the patient's comfort. Not to say that we don't always care about a patient's comfort, but that becomes our only priority, and therefore we withdraw any life support measures that may be keeping the patient alive artificially, such as a mechanical ventilation, vasopressors. We would stop dialysis if they were on that, things like that.
And when you change someone's DNR to a DNR-CC,
Objection, Judge, this is beyond scope.
Well, I disagree.
does that mean that that patient needs to be immediately removed from the ventilator?
No, but we make plans to do so according to the wishes of the family in that case.
And in your experience as a doctor, have you seen any things to show you that it is improper or bad for a person to die on a ventilator?
Objection.
Okay. Sustained.
Is there a reason why it's not necessary to remove someone from a ventilator immediately after changing them to a DNR-CC?
Sure.
Objection.
No, I'll permit that one.
Go ahead.
Sure. Sometimes a patient, and we've talked about this, may be actively dying, and sometimes simply stopping those vasopressors, they would subsequently pass away very quickly. We talked about paralytics being a medication that keeps you paralyzed, so we need to know that those have been off and out of a patient's system sufficiently before we would take the tube out. So there are certainly several things that it is predicated on before we would proceed with that extubation.
Okay. Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay. Doctor, you may step down. Thank
Thank
you
you.
kindly. You can leave that
Okay.
there. We'll collect it. Who's up? Don't.
Your Honor, I believe that Dr. Woodkey is our next. That is Mr. Zion's witness, and I will bring them in.
Okay. You guys holding up okay? Is it comfortable back there yet? Back in the jury box, jury room. It's okay? I just noticed that one group seems a lot funner than the other. I don't know what's going on here. I won't tell you which one. We were saving it for you.
Thank you, Your Honor. State of Ohio calls Dr. Woodkey to the stand.
Doctor, come on down.
Just follow me on it. Oh, you got it, David?
Follow that gentleman right there. Mr. Pennix.
And just raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Please sit make yourself comfortable. And if you would be so kind as to state your name for the record and spell your name, please.
Deborah Woodkey, it's Woidtke.
Thank you.
Doctor, if you're more comfortable with your mask down, you may.
Okay, thanks.
Okay? We had another doctor in there recently, so I don't know. Okay? You ready? You may proceed.
Thank you. Dr. Woodkey, what do you do for a living?
I'm an internal medicine physician, but more specifically, I'm a hospitalist.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what a hospitalist is?
So by training, we train in an internal medicine program, but most internists in this day and age either practice.
I want to slow you. You're going too fast for me, and I
Okay.
have talked to you before, so slow her down, please. I'm going to step back here so I make sure everyone can hear.
Internal medicine physicians are either inpatient physicians, which is a hospitalist, or outpatient internal medicine doctors, perhaps like a primary care provider that you would go to.
All right, and you are inpatient or outpatient?
I am inpatient.
And could you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury your education and qualifications to do the job you do?
Well, we will go to 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, then you do a 3-year residency. Still to this day, there's no fellowship to be a hospitalist. You either decide that you're going to stay in, your interest is in the hospital, or your interest would be to be a primary care provider outside the hospital doing internal medicine, primary care, mostly for adults. It's usually not children, it's adults, older folks, complicated medical patients.
And are you licensed to practice medicine in the state of Ohio?
Yes,
And how long have you been so licensed?
for 24 years.
And are you board certified in anything? You said there's not a fellowship, but is there a board certification to become an internal medicine doctor?
No, you're just board certified in internal medicine. There's different tracks, but internal medicine.
And that's what you're board certified in?
Yes.
And technically, who do you work for somebody?
Well, we're a private group. We're called Columbus Inpatient Care, and we're a group of 41, 43 hospitalists, advanced care practitioners like nurse practitioners and physician assistants.
And so that's a corporation you work for that you're part of?
Yeah.
And does your corporation contract with any local hospitals?
Yes, we contract with Mount Carmel.
All right. And were you so employed and so contracted back in 2018?
Yes.
We've heard that Mount Carmel is a hospital group of 4 separate hospitals. Was there a particular hospital you were working at?
At that time, we were only at Mount Carmel West, some nursing facilities. We may have started at Mount Carmel East that year. I'd have to think about that. I don't think so, though. I think we were only at Mount Carmel West.
All right. So what was a typical day for you like back in 2018 working at Mount Carmel West?
Well, it is somewhat like shift work in that we'd come in around, the day rounders would come in around 7 in the morning. You get your list. The list is split up by one lead rounder. You see the patients that are in the hospital. Every single one needs to be seen every day in the hospital. And then at 3 o'clock, there's a 1 hour-ish, 1.5 hour overlap between the daytimers, several evening shift doctors, and then an overlap, a night shift. We were 8-hour shifts.
Okay. And did you work in the morning shift or the evening shift?
Well, I worked all the shifts, but that mostly on day, a lot of evening, but almost never nights.
Did your group have evening hospitalists on duty?
Yes.
All right. So, as a hospitalist, were you ever assigned the role of attending physician for any patients?
Yes. The way it works is the hospitalist group, patients are almost always assigned to the hospitalist teams. And then typically we would consult as needed. There are some other admitting services in the hospital, such as trauma or general surgery. But the vast majority of patients in any hospital anywhere in the country are assigned to the hospitalist teams.
And then you were assigned as the attending physician for that patient?
The attending would technically be who from my group was seeing the patient that day and that week would be who that patient would specifically be assigned to. But in general, the admission service would say Columbus Inpatient Care, my group.
Oh, I see. So the hospital assigns it to your group, and you said there was 30 to 40 doctors in your group?
Yes.
And then you would be assigned like a particular day or week to that patient?
Yes.
All right. So taking you back to 2018, did you happen to be assigned the attending for a woman named Rebecca Walls.
Yes.
I'm just going to show you the whole thing. I'm going to show you what I marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 13. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 13?
Yes.
For the record, it's a black binder that says Rebecca Walls, count 13. Do you know what is contained in this binder?
I'm assuming it's her entire medical record. It's thick.
We had a chance to go over this beforehand,
Yes.
and did it appear to be a fair and accurate copy of Rebecca Walls' medical records?
Yes.
From when you saw her? All
Yes.
right. So what was your role in the care of Rebecca Walls back in 2018, specifically referring to the dates of November 13th, 2018, to her discharge on November 19th of 2018?
I believe that when I don't know what day of the week it was, our week usually starts on a Monday, but I met her, I believe, already as a critically ill patient in the ICU. She was, when I picked up her care, she was already in the intensive care unit, intubated, which means on a ventilator, had already been in very critical condition. So and that happens sometimes. I never met her well. I picked her up already in a very ill state.
What, if anything, did you do with her as her attending physician when you met her in the ICU?
Well, when the patient's in the ICU and we're the admitting service, we have, they're being cared for mainly by the ICU team. We relinquish a little bit of control of our patients when they go in the ICU because we've turned them over to a specialty service, which in this case would be the intensive care team.
What type of structure was the ICU at Mount Carmel West in 2018 in regards to whether it was an open or whether it was a closed ICU?
Technically, our ICUs in Mount Carmel are open ICUs in that the internal medicine admitting team is allowed to follow along when they go in the unit. We're allowed to suggest some things, and we are updated daily. We still see the patients every day in the ICU, but we are required to have a consult to an ICU team.
What does that mean? You have to have a consult to the ICU team.
They don't want a group of hospitalists perhaps managing ventilators and pressors and complicated antibiotics. They want to make sure that there's a specialty service following the ventilator. They're pulmonary critical care physicians like Dr. Moody, who you just heard for the last couple hours.
You know Dr. Moody?
Yes.
From your work at Mount Carmel. So just to summarize, it's fair to say when they're in the ICU, the people taking care of are the ICU?
Yes.
All right. So did she ever leave the ICU once you were assigned as the attending?
No.
Did you check in with her every day that she was at the hospital? Did you go in and see what was going on with her?
Yes.
All right. And we're not going to go through this, but what was her prognosis? Could you summarize her prognosis, what her course was, and what the expectations were regarding her recovery?
Well, to discuss her course, I might need at least a discharge summary, but
Your Honor, would it be all right to give that to this witness?
Would that help refresh your memory?
yes.
I'm just going to pull this out. Showing you what's been labeled as the discharge summary of 11. I don't know what this page is. Is that good enough for you? Okay, the discharge summary from State's Exhibit 13. Yeah. What's that? Does does that help refresh your memory as
Yes.
to what her course of treatment was in the ICU and what her prognosis and expected recovery was?
Yes,
Can you
yeah.
tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as her attending, what that was?
Well, she was 75 years old. She had a lot of chronic medical problems, which perhaps I don't have to name them all, but it looks like she had gone to see her internist, who was trained similar to me, but is an outpatient internist, and he saw her in the office, sent her to the hospital for shortness of breath. She had heart failure. It looks like she may have been directly admitted to the ICU. She had a heart cath and had to require a heart stent in one of her vessels. And she had a hematoma in the groin, and she required intubation just a couple days after admission. So at least 2 days into her admission, she's now in the ICU. Again, she became very, very low blood pressure or hypotensive, requiring medications to support her blood pressure. And then she became very unstable, and it sounds like, again, it was a situation where the family was called to the bedside to discuss her declining prognosis, and then she was palliatively, it looks like she was, I didn't say whether or not she was palliatively extubated, but I presume she was made a DNR-CC. That means comfort care only, which would suggest we were going to take away the life support, which would include the pressors and probably the ventilator.
Could you all hear her?
And then she
Okay, hold on, Doc. One of the things that's human nature, when you're focusing on something, your voice will go down in volume.
Okay.
Avoid it so they can hear you, because I know they were kind of straining down there at the end.
Okay.
I'm going to stand back here and speak real loud. Kind of probably annoying everybody, but I think that sometimes makes witnesses speak a little louder. So you said shortness of breath. Did you guys use a medical term in that document, just in case the jury's looking at that at some point?
Probably dyspnea would be a word.
Dyspnea. Can you spell that for the record? And if the jurors see that term, can you explain what that is?
DYSPNEA, dyspnea. It's just that. It's a medical terminology for shortness of breath.
Okay. You said she had a right groin hematoma. What is a right groin hematoma?
My assumption here is that she had a heart catheterization. Typically, they either enter through the wrist or the groin.
Slow down.
They typically puncture an artery either in the wrist or the groin. In this case, it was very likely the groin because she had a collection of blood or a hematoma at the catheterization site.
Is a hematoma a doctor's way of saying a bruise?
No, it's more than a bruise. A hematoma is a large collection of blood.
Was that a medically important issue she was having?
Yes.
Okay. And that was is that what we call, the word I'm probably going to say wrong, iatrogenic issue?
It could be considered, it's a well-known complication after a heart cath, especially since patients that require stents need antiplatelet medications. So I would say it's iatrogenic, but not uncommon.
Yeah, if you could spell say it.
Iatrogenic? Oh, no.
Didn't know it was going to be a spelling test.
IATROGENIC.
So explain that. Pretend I don't know anything about medicine.
An iatrogenic problem would be a complication of a medical procedure that is well described. And when you sign a consent, when you have something done, they say all kinds of things that could possibly happen before you go get a colonoscopy or almost any procedure. Those would be iatrogenic complications. Bleeding, heart failure, they name all kinds of possible complications, yeah.
Okay. So you've been reading from your discharge summary, correct?
Yes.
And if I may have that back, please, thank you. And I'm going to take this, because I don't think this was stupid. Discharge summary. To me, that is, what does that mean, discharge? Is that when you leave the hospital, I think of, well, I've been discharged from the hospital, I leave with my family. What happens if you die in the hospital? What do they call that?
It's still a discharge summary, but some people will refer to it as a death note, but it's a summary of their admission and their passing. And it's mainly for the medical record, but also for the primary care physician, so they can read the summary of what happened to their patient after he sent his patient to the hospital, 6 days before she passed. And certainly he was going to look in the electronic medical record to understand what transpired.
Okay. So when we see admit date on medical records and Rebecca Wall's date 13, that's the day she came into the hospital?
Yes.
And if the patient died in the hospital, the discharge date would be that second date?
Yes.
So what date did Rebecca Walls get discharged from the hospital?
I believe it was the 19th of November. November 19th, 2018.
Okay. And did she pass during a time when you were there?
No.
All right. So did you come to work the next day, the day after she passed?
I presume so. I came in the next morning. I would have to confirm that, but.
All right, so now you're the attending, and one of your patients that you're the attending for that was in the ICU has passed. Tell the folks what if any responsibilities you have to document the records and or to do anything else in regards to this patient.
So since I was the last attending of record that saw the patient that day before, it looks like she died around 1:30 in the morning. A message would get passed to my group in the night, who would pass it to me during the day to complete her discharge summary, and really more importantly, the death certificate. The last physician seeing the patient is signing the death certificate. So this is important legally for the family and for death records. The death certificate is even more important.
Okay. So this would be the responsibility of the last attending on record to do the
That's
discharge summary.
how my group, yes.
Okay. It could have been somebody else if it wasn't your week there, right? If she had been trained, she lived long enough and could have gone to another person in your group.
Right.
Even if she had stayed in the ICU?
Yes.
All right. So if your week was up, it could have just been passed on to somebody else.
Your objection, Your Honor, ask and answer.
Permitted.
Yes.
Someone that had never even seen her before.
No. The last person that saw the patient, she actually died at 1:30 in the morning. I saw her the calendar day before.
I see. I see. So even if it was your week up, you would have still been responsible for this.
Yes.
But if you had just come on and been the last person to see her, even if it had been for one day, this would have been your responsibility.
Yes. That's how my group does it.
Your group, and how many do you have in Mount Carmel West at this time?
At that time, maybe 30.
I guess the point is it's a rotating thing.
Yes.
All right, so you're the last one to see her. She died at what time in the morning?
Looks like at 1:30 in the morning.
You get the notification. What do you do to prepare that document that you have in front of you, the discharge summary?
Well, a lot of the final diagnoses of this document and the beginning of the history of present illness are the same as they were in the days prior, because it gets updated from day to day as the patient's progress improves or declines. But usually the last paragraph is the summary of just the 24 hours before the patient passes as they're declining, and what transpired and what discussions occurred and how the patient died.
How long did it take you to prepare that?
Maybe 20 minutes.
All right. And do you ever use the cut and paste option when preparing that discharge summary?
I would say the top of the form, some things don't change, like the final diagnoses, the primary care provider, and the history of present illness. The beginning of the history of present illness does not change.
All right. So you just find your last progress note and then continue on?
Kind of.
well, I don't want, tell them how.
Well, the final diagnoses, yes, they really don't change much. So you can cut and paste the diagnoses. There's not going to be a big dramatic change in the diagnoses.
Okay. You said the last paragraph you would have, is new for this document, the discharge summary.
Yeah, yes.
So if I can publish this to the jury judge, since it's been identified,
Any objection, Mr. Nash?
No objection.
Okay.
and just so, where should we start with the new stuff?
With the new
Should we
one.
start here or here?
The end of the first page.
Okay, we'll start with here. There should be a laser pointer up there for you, if you need to use it to point to anything for the jury.
Is it there? It looks like a little block. There you go.
All right, so this is what we've been talking about, the discharge summary of Rebecca Walls, right?
Actually, that's the history and physical. I think you have.
Oh, where do I? Oh, I'm wrong. Ours are double-sided. Sorry. I know you. You right. You right. This is it. Here we go. Discharge summary of Rebecca Walls, right? Did I do that now? Right?
Yes,
And that's you, right?
yes.
All right. It looks like she was discharged or died on 11/19. It says you wrote this on 12/4 of 18. Or you tell me. That's what I read that as. Why is that date there?
That's true. That's accurate, actually. Occasionally, if a patient passes away in the night, and my last day on service was that day, by the time the message gets to me, or perhaps if I have a couple days off, that's true. I did not do it until the 4th.
Okay, so this is the day you're writing it then, on 12/4.
Well, unless that's when it was. No, that must be when I did it, because that can't be when it was printed.
Okay. So you talked about there's a part that you can it doesn't change. We're going down this document. Final diagnosis, is that the...
Right. Typically, that would not change. We knew why she was declining.
Okay. So you're just getting this from the previous progress notes?
Yes.
And then we go into the history of the present illness.
Correct.
Using your laser pointer, is any of that cut and paste from the previous progress notes?
Yes, perhaps up to.
Is it in front of you? Is there a little...
There is, but I thought I had to
Okay, yeah,
show
there you
them.
go.
Oh, yeah. I would say. Okay, so she was intubated on the 16th. She remained very hypotensive, requiring pressors.
Okay.
Okay, I'd say starting from overnight on 11/18,
Okay.
she remained.
So for the record, if I could just describe what the witness was pointing at. You're pointing at the last line of the first page of the discharge summary, correct? Starting with overnight, that's the new stuff for this document?
Maybe the sentence before, too, but she remained very hypotensive, requiring vasopressors, and critically ill in the ICU.
Okay. This document goes on. Is this the page 2 of the discharge summary?
Yes, yes.
And so this is all new. Can you tell the jury what this all means, if you can, please?
Okay. So she was hemodynamically unstable. That means her blood pressure was not stable, her vital signs were not stable. She was in distress, not doing well. They had to progressively go up on her vasopressors, rising levels of the medications just to support her blood pressure. It looks like the family was called to the bedside to discuss code status. They changed her to a DNR-CC. That would mean that she went from either a full code or a DNR-CCA to a DNR-CC, which is comfort measures only. Typically, that means the family is choosing to either withdraw or not stop going up on vasopressors, and probably it usually also means extubate the patient, remove the ventilator with the family present.
Okay. You can go on. And then you say it right there.
So, and then she died at 1:30 in the morning with her family present. And then I noted that I'd already signed the death certificate, because that's always the big question: who's going to sign the death certificate? That's much more And I'm happy I've already signed it because I didn't dictate this till 2 weeks later. So the death certificate is needed before that.
Why is the death certificate so important?
I'm not sure I just know that the funeral homes, they can't proceed with funeral arrangements and certainly not if the patient is going to be cremated, they can't cremate the remains until the death certificate is in hand and acceptable to the coroner.
You were, in reading and describing the new part of the discharge summary, the part that was not cut and pasted, you were saying, I was told, I'm assuming, why? Are you there when all this is happening?
No, I very likely got a quick checkout from my night team in the morning that said your patient passed away in the ICU bed. Mrs. Walls in ICU bed 3 passed away around 1 in the morning. It sounds like the family withdrew. I get a checkout. We do checkout at shift change. So I was not there, but certainly somebody told me that. I didn't.
Okay.
There's no way I could have known the family was present.
All right, so for purposes of medical diagnosis, someone told you this information and then you put it into the medical record.
Correct.
Okay. You said, I have already signed the death certificate, showing you what I've marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 18N. So we got them for all patients. Let me approach the witness, Your Honor. Showing you what I marked as 18N. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, this looks like her death certificate.
Okay, is that your signature on that?
Yes.
All right. Does it appear to be fair and accurate?
Yes.
May I publish, Your Honor?
You may. I assume there's no objections.
Do you have any objection? Yeah. Here we go with State's Exhibit 18. That is your signature here in the middle under the 26A certifier name and title.
Yes.
All right. And what date did you sign this?
11/26 of 18.
So how many days, there's what, how many days in November? 31, right? 30? 30. There's 30 days in November, so that's 11 days. Well, how many days after is that then?
7.
7 days after Ms. Walls actually passed, right? Then that would have been 5 days before you wrote the new part in the discharge summary?
Yes.
Okay. So did you write in this stuff here? Has to, let me see if I can, in part 28, has to immediate cause, and then list any conditions, something to immediate cause. Did you write all this stuff in here?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury where you got that information from?
Well, that's her diagnoses. That's her main diagnoses that contributed to her death. And they want to know, they want the most recent one to the oldest one, in that order. The first one should be the most recent one. Diagnosis, that is.
Did you make any of those diagnoses yourself?
No.
Who made those diagnoses? And where are you getting that from?
Well, I mean, what do you mean make the diagnoses?
Did you even examine? I mean, I don't want to say you didn't do your job here. I'm just saying, you said she was in the ICU already when you saw her.
Right.
So did you say, oh, this is what's wrong with her? Or are you getting this from what other doctors have said is wrong?
It's a team of doctors have diagnosed her with these problems.
Okay. So, yeah, you're getting it from States 13, from the medical records.
Well, that and just the facts that we have echocardiograms and she's on dialysis. I mean, there's a lot surrounding these diagnoses that support them.
Yeah, I'm not trying to question. I'm just trying to, where does that knowledge that you're writing down come from? It comes from the whole team that saw it, right?
Yes.
All right. let's, you use some abbreviations just in case the jurors have some questions. Heart failure, that's where she needed the thing to go up in her leg and caused a bruise, or caused the blood.
Actually, that was the third one. She had coronary artery, number 3, she had coronary artery disease requiring a right coronary artery stent.
Okay, so CAD stands for coronary artery disease.
Yes.
And then RCA stands for?
Right coronary artery.
Okay. And then this was by history, the last one there?
Right.
And what does a C with a line over it mean?
With. She had a history of bladder cancer and had been diagnosed with a recurrence.
Okay. So when she got here, she used to have it and then it had come back? Is that what that means?
Prior to the admission even, they knew this because I wrote months, so that was known when she came into the hospital.
Okay. And what's acute renal failure requiring dialysis?
She had progressed to renal failure requiring hemodialysis. Her kidneys were not working, and she had to receive renal replacement therapy.
Okay. And then this last one, acute, what's that?
Congestive heart failure, and she had a severely tight aortic valve, a stenotic or a tight aortic valve, which caused her to go into heart failure.
Okay.
Those were all fairly new diagnoses.
Those were what?
New diagnoses.
By the team at the hospital?
Yes.
All right. So when you're preparing the discharge summary on 12-4, you say this was, the first part up to that last sentence was cut and pasted?
Probably.
And then the last bit was what you were told by whoever you talked to in the morning?
Probably.
Did you go through State's Exhibit 13, page by page, in making your discharge summary?
No.
Did you go back here in the section labeled Medication Administration Record? For the record, this is from States 13 for Rebecca Walls. It's Medication Administration Records. It begins with an entry, administration date time of 11/18/2018 at 19:49 Eastern Time. Did you go back and look at this document?
No.
Would that ever be your practice to do that?
No. And I'm sorry, on the back of that, does that list the amount of fentanyl she received on 11/19? I'm not going to ask you to tell what it was, just does it, is that where the fentanyl is she received on 11/19? Yes.
Okay. Were you aware of any of that when you wrote that discharge summary?
No.
Were you aware of any of that when you signed that death certificate?
No.
Is that your practice to do that in cases like this?
No.
I'd like to talk to you about patient Melissa Pennix, State's Exhibit 14. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 14?
Yes.
We had a chance to look at this, and you had a chance to review these?
Yes.
And what are these, please?
Well, that's her whole electronic medical record, but including, you had specifically had me look at her discharge summary and her death certificate.
Right. Do they appear to be fair and accurate?
Yes.
And when you say her whole medical record, we're referring to an admission between 11/15 of 2018 and 11/20 of 2018.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Okay. Same thing, you're the assigned attending. What do you remember about Melissa Pennix that you could share regarding your treatment of Melissa Pennix?
I remember more accurately because when I picked her care up, she was out on the regular floor, not in the ICU, not doing well, and she had pneumonia, she had a lot of other things. If you want me to go through all those, I'd have to have that in front of me. But
You need that in front of you? May I, Judge?
yeah.
If that helps refresh your memory. Any objection, Ms. Menashe? No. Okay, so I'm just going to give her the discharge summary. Is that what you need, or do you need the whole?
Sure, the discharge summary would be fine.
Just going to remind you.
No, Butch.
When she was first admitted on November the 15th, she was actually on a regular medical floor, not doing very well, but she had multifocal pneumonia, she had heart failure, she was coughing up blood, and she was on blood thinners.
How many blood thinners was she on?
How many?
Yeah, was she on more than one?
She was on Eliquis and Plavix, and aspirin. She was on 3 for a while. So she was coughing up blood, and that would be normal with a pneumonia in multiple lobes of your lung. She was going into kidney failure. The biggest issue is she was going into progressive respiratory failure from a really bad multifocal pneumonia that grew a very bad bacteria that patients often don't survive. And then I conferenced with the family every day, and she declined, and we discussed that she was going to need a ventilator. She was failing. She was tiring. So I transferred her to the ICU in the daytime during my shift. And this is her death note, but she didn't, she went into the ICU. She got intubated. We had continued everything, antibiotics and ventilator support. And then again, so in the morning, I can't come in the next day. She'd been palliatively extubated in the evening, and she expired rather quickly, I write. And then I put the time of death and that her family was at bedside.
Does that appear to be fair and accurate recitation of the course of her treatment in your mind and this discharge summary?
Yes.
Your Honor, request permission to publish.
Any objection?
All right, so once again, from states should be 14, the discharge summary. So this is the date she would have been come into the hospital, and when we say discharge, we mean that's, if she dies, that's the date she died, right?
Correct.
11/20. That's you, right?
Yes.
And who's this guy?
Dr. Runzer would be her internist, who is her outpatient internist.
So that's like, I don't know if people still use it, like a family doctor, like the guy I go to for my checkups, or anyone goes to for their checkups?
Right, but internal medicine instead of family practice. Yeah.
Okay.
Her primary care provider.
And for the record, that's Gregory Runzer, R-U-N-S-E-R?
Yes.
All right. And he just went through the final diagnosis. In preparing this document, and it looks like you electronically signed this on 11/26, right?
Can I add that when I signed it may not have been when I dictated it, because these dates seem kind of far off. I may have dictated it, and then it goes through medical records, and I signed it on that date. But that is accurate. That is when I signed it.
Okay. You might have prepared this anytime between her date of death and that date of signing. Got it. All right. Is this part up here, the final diagnosis, is that cut and paste from the other medical records?
Very likely. That probably did not change at all.
Okay. And then history of present illness. Now, unlike Ms. Walls, where she's in the ICU already, you got to interact with Ms. Pennix. So is this from the medical records, or is this all brand new here?
No, still most of it is from the medical records. And then at some point I peel off into what happened that day that I moved her to the ICU. And I have the hindsight at this time of dictating this. I will have known that I sent her into the unit. I went home at 5. I came back the next day and she had passed.
Okay.
So there is a little bit of hindsight in my dictation here.
All right. So when you're talking about what happened to her regarding her respiratory biofire, what's that? I don't know what that is.
It's just a panel to more accurately figure out what is causing her respiratory failure, her pneumonia. We used it a lot during COVID, too. It's just a very common respiratory test.
Okay. The family gathered at bedside after we had transferred her to the unit. So this is all, how did were you there for any of that?
I believe we intubated her before I left that day. We brought her to the unit, and she was put on the ventilator. as I recall, the family struggled with whether or not she would have wanted this, but again, they needed to gather family to discuss.
Okay,
And we didn't really have time to discuss too long because she was going into respiratory failure.
all right. So this part where she was palliatively extubated, were you there for that?
No.
All right. And, yeah, because what in military, this is, the time of death was,
10:50, just before 11 p.m.
okay, on 11/20, so you are not at the hospital at this time?
No.
So how would you have found out about those things?
Again, the next day, my team, this would have gotten past my evening team / night team, and they would have let us know in the morning. We would have printed the census. My patient would have been on the census, and usually that's the first, one of the important things we communicate to each other in the morning.
Yeah, someone passed away.
Yeah.
All right, so that would have been, once again, information given to you by your team.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
All right. And so all of this last sentence, this is just one of those, you say discharge summary when someone dies. I would be happy to sign. Why are you saying you'd be happy?
I will never dictate that again, but I'm never happy to sign death certificates. But the reason we identify who's going to sign a death certificate is, again, it's an important legal document, and the chaplain immediately needs to know who will be, right after the patient passes, they chase down our team, who will sign the death certificate. They need to give a name and contact information to the funeral home for a physician who will be signing the death certificate. In this case, it definitely should have been me. I knew her for days, several days before she passed.
So if the chaplain's looking and he can look in the MER or whatever and say, oh, got to find Dr. Woodkey, she said she'd be happy to sign this.
Right.
Got it. Okay. And then looking at State's Exhibit, (18N).
Yes.
Do you recognize State's Exhibit 18N?
Yes.
And what is State's Exhibit 18N?
It's Melissa Pennix's death certificate, listing her causes of death, just shortened version of what I had on the diagnoses from the discharge summary.
Thank you. Fair and accurate?
Yes.
Your Honor?
No objection.
So once again,
I'm sorry.
I said no objection, and she said no.
I can't hear her. And I
Okay.
can't suppose. So can you speak?
Did that accurately reflect the conversation?
That did.
first time you ever been told someone.
I didn't know someone could hear.
All right, thank you. Publishing now 18N. And once again, is this your signature halfway down under certifier name and title?
Yes.
All right. And you signed this on 11/26, is that right?
Yes.
And the cause of death is, if you could, that you wrote down?
It's MRSA pneumonia would be methicillin-resistant Staph aureus. It was a resistant staph bacteria. Her second diagnosis is Candida esophagitis,
Is there a common term for that disease?
like a yeast infection of the esophagus that we see mainly in immunocompromised patients.
Is it also called thrush?
Well,
No, I don't know. That's just what I was told.
when it's in the mouth, it's thrush.
Oh, okay. So where was this on her?
In her esophagus.
Oh, so this is like down her throat. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a yeast infection in her throat. Okay. And what's this?
Coronary artery disease,
All right. And then what's that mean?
an arrhythmia, atrial fibrillation, probably why she was on the blood thinner when she came in.
Okay. So what killed her immediately was the pneumonia she had developed. 2 weeks.
Yes, it was a slow decline, but yes, the MRSA pneumonia would be considered the main offender to her death.
All right. And then what's this little two squiggly lines and 1 month mean?
Approximately 1 month. She had that prior to admission.
Okay. And years, are you just, is that precise at all?
No, just, again, they need to be ordered in the most immediate to the most remote in diagnosis. It doesn't have to be exact.
So certainly an important legal document for all the reasons you've said, but you're doing the best you can with approximations as to cause of death here.
Correct.
Once again, referring to State's Exhibit 14, we've gone over the discharge summary. You go back into what's called the MARS, the medication administration record. I mean, I know this is all electronic. We got this all in a notebook. But did you go on the computer and look at the MARS for the amount of midazolam and fentanyl she was given at the time of excavation?
No.
All right. So showing you the medication administration record from State's Exhibit 14, the last page of that, 11/20/2018. When preparing your discharge summary and/or signing that death certificate, did it occur to you to go back and look at how much fentanyl and midazolam she was given?
No.
It's available to you if you wanted to, right?
Yes.
Is that ever your practice in preparing discharge summaries and/or signing death certificates in cases like this?
No, that would not be normal practice to go search through the MAR after a patient passes.
Why not?
Well, it just would be extreme. In my opinion, we see thousands of patients a year. It's just extremely low yield, especially in a situation like this, that both of these two patients we're discussing and all the patients that my group saw these were very expected deaths. There was no surprises. Perhaps if there were some questions, you could. Again, I don't even know where in the EMR that form is. I've never seen it before, but it's available to us, but it is not normal practice to go search back through those records.
In your practice and in the practice at Mount Carmel West, do you assume good intentions in those you work with?
Of course.
I have nothing further.
Ms. Mashing?
Do you want any of these up here?
No.
Okay.
But these, yeah, just
Yeah, these, you don't need these.
One moment, Your Honor, while I get my exhibits ready. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
For the record, we know each other.
We do.
Socially. But we've never discussed your testimony in any way. Ms.
No.
I want to start with the discharge summary in Rebecca Walls, if we could. Showing you what I've marked as Joint Exhibit 13, page 7 and 8. I know you had indicated with a pointer just which sentences or lines you had, quote, cut and paste. I just want to make sure I understand the process. You dictate the discharge summary report, do you not?
It's a drag-in, so it's a combination of typing electronic. You can cut and paste parts that you want and some dictating.
Okay, so let's talk about the part where you can manually, if you will, cut and paste something.
Okay.
Is that how you indicated you did this first portion here, is you manually cut and pasted?
Probably. I wasn't expecting this question. I'd have to look at my last progress note to say for sure, but this looks like the beginning of her hospital admission, the story of when she came in, that was very likely cut and pasted the very first section there.
Okay. And fair to say, though, you understand as the attending physician when you're doing a discharge summary that ultimately you're going to have to put your name on it. You understand that?
Yes.
And so when you're cutting and pasting, fair to say that you read in advance what you cut and paste.
Yes.
Okay. And then after, and obviously you cut and paste from the EMR, right? From the electronic medical record of the patient.
Yes.
So you're reading that as well. Certainly you have access to the patient's electronic medical record.
Yes.
Do you review the sheet of a patient that says significant events? Is that a sheet that you would review?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Showing you what has been marked as Joint Exhibit 13, page 935. Does this look as if this is a significance event page for Rebecca Walls?
Yes.
Okay. And I just want to scroll down and see if this is the type of document that you might review when dictating your portion of the discharge summary into the report.
I see that this document exists. That is not something I would normally review. We speak to each other. I look at the progress notes. A lot of this was reported in some of the progress notes. But no, I do not review the significant event report.
Okay, but you would look at the progress notes in the EMR?
Yes.
Would you look at all of the progress notes or just the most recent progress notes?
The most recent ones from the day before when I saw the patient.
And then in addition to your review of the progress notes, the most recent ones, you also have conversations as a matter of practice with someone from your team that tells you about what happened?
Yes.
And then as a result of that review of those progress notes, other documents in the EMR and conversations, you dictated the beginning at overnight 11:18, she remained, etc.?
Yes.
Okay. And I asked you about whether you reviewed that significant event because you included this information here that the family was called to bedside to discuss the code status.
Yes, and I'm telling you that I very likely was told this from my colleagues who are present in the hospital. I probably did not review the significant events report.
And fair to say that given that you work for the group, you work in a team, do you not?
Yes.
And you rely on one another when you're not at the hospital, that a team member is at the hospital, that you communicate with one another to share information.
Yes.
And I remember during your direct examination when the prosecutor asked you, for instance, about the final diagnosis of Rebecca Walls, and you asked to see the discharge summary. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Because fair to say, absent the prosecutor showing you this discharge summary, you didn't have any independent recollection of the day before when you saw Rebecca Walls, correct?
At the time I dictated this?
No.
Today?
Yes, now, current day.
No.
And so the discharge summary, part of its value, is it not, is it summarizes the most important events.
Correct.
And want to do the same thing, if we can, with Melissa Pennix. And I'm sorry, let me just make sure on Rebecca Walls, and I'll put it up so we're clear. She had kidney, heart, and lung failure. All three, essentially.
Yes.
And even had, and I just want the jurors to understand this, TAVR, am I correct that she was actually slated to have a valve replacement in her heart. But
That's accurate. It looks like they were trying to stabilize her enough to try to get that done, but obviously she never stabilized.
and so she couldn't have the valve, the TAVR surgery on her valve.
Correct.
And what does the aortic valve do for us?
Well, the aortic valve is the main valve. Is when the left ventricle squeezes, blood rushes out your body. The final valve, it's in a high pressure system, and she had a very tight or stenotic aortic valve.
And that could cause heart failure, could it not?
It causes heart failure, and it'll eventually cause death if it gets too critical stenosis.
Showing you now what's been marked as Joint Exhibit 14, page 7 or 8. Does this appear to be the discharge summary from Melissa Pennix?
Yes.
And same thing with respect to her critical illnesses. She also had heart, kidney, and lung failure.
Yes.
And she's on vasopressors?
I don't know if she got put on vasopressors at the end. Did I comment on that? I don't think her issues were very pulmonary.
Okay.
She became vent dependent. I don't think she got put on vasopressors.
Okay, let me, I should have asked this question. Sorry to toggle back and forth. Rebecca Walls, she was on vasopressors, correct?
Yes, she was.
So, and your notes indicate as to Melissa Pennix, there is no note about vasopressors on her. Is that fair to say?
Correct. And for the purposes of the discharge, it honestly would not have, it's insignificant.
And this case, this being Ms. Pennix, you were more familiar with Ms. Pennix, were you not, than you were with patient Rebecca Walls?
Yes.
Because you had seen her on a regular basis before she passed.
Yes.
Fair to say that this was a declining individual.
Yes.
And you, in fact, were the one that made the decision that she needed to go to the ICU.
Yes.
And indicated here, I just wanted to know, was that when it says I was in contact, can we infer that this is not a cut and paste? This is you dictating into the machine as to what happened?
Correct.
And it says you were in contact with the family every day as to her clinical picture, never began to improve, and she remained on either Airvo or BiPAP and was not even able to eat because of hypoxia.
Correct.
And those were your own observations that you put into the dictation machine?
Yes.
And then you go on to talk about her respiratory biofire was also negative?
Correct.
What does that sentence mean?
Well, we are looking for any other infection or anything else that could be treated to make sure that it was all MRSA pneumonia.
Because if there was something else that could have been treated, you would have wanted to know what it was.
Yes.
And then you note, do you not, the family gathered at bedside after we had transferred her to the unit and intubated her and decided that she would not have wanted to be put on a ventilator.
Correct.
I know that the prosecutor asked you that you weren't present, so it's likely that that information was relayed to you from a team member. Does that sound right?
Yes.
And I just noted, with respect to both of those patients, that you indicated on direct they were very expected deaths.
Yes.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Redirect.
No, Your Honor, I have no redirect.
Doctor, thank you. You may step down. Call your next witness.
Well, Your Honor, for the first time in this trial, we have run out of witnesses for the day.
We went quicker than they anticipated, I guess.
So 3 witnesses in a day, I think that's a banner day.
I hope it's a record we break soon, but that's beside the point. Ladies and gentlemen, you get to go home. Remember the admonition. Let's get started at 9 in the morning with lots of witnesses.
We'll have them all here, sir.
Okay? Have a great evening, folks. Be safe. What's the temperature outside? Jeez. Enjoy your early.
I was not familiar with it, and I will echo what Mr. Abaya said. It's been estimated that there are 300,000 separate documents here. So my only point in all of that was I just wanted to look at it. We don't know where it came from. We still don't. And you know what? I've got 2 people on this right now, and they'll probably find it somewhere in those 300,000 things. So I didn't want to impute anything on that. Remedial stuff aside, that was it. I just wanted some time to look at it so that we knew what it was. So we're going to, I'm sure there are things we have that we think we've given, we haven't given. So I want to put that on the record, that I wasn't trying to say they were trying to spring anything on us. I just wanted a chance. I thought I had all our statements. So I don't Okay, and if we could just confirm on the record, we have now all the expert reports we're going to receive at this point.
You're confirming that, or you're asking for
We
comment?
would ask that the defense confirm on the record we're done with that, so we can start. We can dive into
Okay,
it.
let me go through your checklist. Okay, relative to the exhibit that I did not permit, anything you want to put on the record, Mr. Bias?
No.
Okay. Relative to the experts, what's our progress?
I think we have a supplemental that we plan on turning over to them today, and I don't believe there's anything further that we have.
So all 5 reports are in?
Yes. Our expert reports are in, and we have 1 supplemental on Dr. Patel.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
That answers our question, sir. Oh, no, hold on. We have 4. We don't have 5. We're getting 5.
Which one don't you have? The new doctor who they were hiring?
Can I look at this in the morning? I'm going to give you an answer. I'm going to give you the answer in the morning.
Fair enough.
Thanks.
Let's be here early so we can do it 10 minutes before we go and bring the jury in at 9.
Sir.
I'm sorry, are we starting this one?
Well refreshed and all.
We'll shoot you an email.
Will you?
Nothing else for the record? Close the record.
Rob.
So